All set.
Welcome in to the Bonesville Pregame Podcast. Al Myatt with Kevin Monroe. Kevin, of course, great defensive back in his playing days at East Carolina, and the 1999 team on which Kevin was a standout will be recognized this season, their 25th anniversary. Kevin, East Carolina opened the season Saturday night against Norfolk State, 42-3 victory for the Pirates. And we saw a lot of positive things in that game and some mistakes that can be corrected going into game 2 at Old Dominion, Saturday, 6 p.m. kickoff in Norfolk.
Yeah, I was excited to see the Pirates get out there. We heard a lot about John David Baker's offense and the tempo they would run at. Of course, if you followed teams like Ole Miss in the past, you've seen this offense at work. Central Florida's run it for a long time in our conference when they were in the American Conference. And so, yeah, just to see the receivers line up, catch a pass, and then sprint the ball back to the line of scrimmage and get the ball to the officials and line up for the next play. And the plays were just going so quickly. Quarterbacks getting the ball out in 3 seconds or less. It was just really impressive to see. Jake Garcia's arm strength is something I've heard a lot about. It's different. You're watching it at practice versus seeing it in the game. I mean, he's throwing that ball sideline to sideline, putting it on a rope. And his decision-making was so quick. I mean, he's back and he's got his receiver and he's cutting it loose. Now, part of that was to his detriment because I think maybe he had some pre-snap reads that didn't materialize the way he thought they would, and he ended up throwing 3 interceptions. So certainly with the cutback on the turnovers, but the offense in general was just fun to watch. If you take care of the football, I think this is an offense that can be very successful throughout the season.
308 yards passing for Jake Garcia, 4 touchdowns, and East Carolina did yield an early field goal, came back and responded. That was all for the Spartans for the night. It was a field goal in the first quarter. Kevin, defensively, Norfolk State ran the ball 43 times or 45 times, I believe, for 43 yards, 1 for 18 on third down conversions. And those are exceptional numbers.
Yeah, I mean, we expected them to run the football coming into the game, but I also heard that, Daniels had some arm ability and that they were going to maybe open it up because he only threw the ball, I think, 9 times in the opener against FAMU. And so they were going to try to let him throw the football a little bit more. That didn't really materialize. He did have 19 pass attempts, but, in a long game, trying to make a comeback, you could expect that. But, yeah, 45 rushing attempts. I think King was the leading runner early on in the game. He had a 13-yard run, I believe, and then he had a total of 26 yards rushing, and then all of a sudden he was on the sidelines the rest of the game. I think he might have turned an ankle or something, and then his backup came in and had 10 straight rushes where he basically got nothing. He had 10 rushes for 10 yards, and that was kind of the microcosm of their football game. They just could not move the football. As you mentioned, 1 for 18 on third downs. They got to points where they were 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, and they were still trying to run the ball because I think they did not have the faith in Daniels to make a play downfield with his arm, and some of that may have come from the Gibson pick 6. So, it was just it was a rough outing offensively for Norfolk State, but that is a lot. You got to give a lot of credit to the East Carolina defense. I mean, we knew up front with Stevens and Morris and Johnson returning, those guys were going to be stalwarts up front, and they were going to be hard to move, and they were. But also you get Zakai Barker that we heard a lot about, and Raheem Craig also at linebacker. Those guys coming in, making plays. I think Barker was the leading tackler. Michael Edwards that we've known about for a while played well. And so, yeah, the linebackers and the defensive line really showed up. The secondary came up in some run support, but they didn't really have to do much because, there were very many passes on target and very many runners got to the second line of the defense.
After 2-10 season last year, Coach Mike Houston realized the need to get into the portal and get some help. Gavin Gibson, of course, you mentioned his pick 6, 40-yard interception return for a score. The receiver, Anthony Smith, I believe, from NC State, he got into the end zone with a reception. And, of course, Jake Garcia started his career. He started some at Miami of Florida and then transferred to Missouri. Didn't play there, but the the players were talking about the goldfish mentality after the Norfolk State game. And Garcia was explaining that goldfish have tested out as having some of the shortest memory of any living species. And so the Pirates are not thinking back to last year. Garcia's not thinking back to sitting out and not getting on the field at Missouri last year. Everything is focused forward. And the transfer portal has been productive, has the potential to really be a difference maker for the Pirates this year. And we have to realize the fact that we're playing a football championship subdivision opponent in Norfolk State. They've got 63 scholarships, I believe, not as much depth. And East Carolina has 85 scholarships. Well, they'll be matched up against an FBS opponent in Old Dominion this weekend. And ODU has played the Pirates close on some occasions in the past. And coming off a game at South Carolina that Coach Houston said they quite easily could have won. They had some costly turnovers, but they had more total yards than the Gamecocks in that season opener on the road against a Southeastern Conference opponent. So everything looks like the challenge is going to be much steeper this week.
There's no doubt. I think that the Pirates will have to, get more pressure on quarterbacks. They didn't have to do it this past week because they were running the football a lot, but they'll have to get more pressure. Old Dominion did give up 5 sacks this past weekend, so you can get to them. Obviously, that's an SEC defensive line that was chasing after the quarterback, but Grant Wilson attempted 38 passes, completed 22 of them, just shy of 200 yards. So they will throw the football. They have a high up-tempo offense, very similar to the Pirates, and so this is something the defense will be used to. But just because you're used to it doesn't mean you're ready for it and you can stop it. So they'll certainly have to be ready. The defensive backs will be stressed a lot more than they were this past week. IBM specifically, because I think people are a little bit shy of Savone Revel. They're not going to throw the ball to his way a whole lot. He's got the ability to play press man on his side, and he runs well. He's long. He's hard to throw the ball over top of, and so IBM is going to see a lot more action. Now the good thing about that is, if you're Blake Harrell and you feel comfortable about Savone being on the opposite side all by himself, then you can allow him just to do his thing, and you can roll safety help over top of IBM. Not that IBM can't handle it on his own, but just because he's going to get more passing attempts, you can roll that safety over his way and help protect him a little bit. So I expect the back end to be busy. I think Craig was the top receiver, or Page rather was the top receiver for ODU, had 115 yards receiving, so he'll be somebody we pay special attention to. But yeah, defensively, it's going to be a completely different ball game. They've got the ability to stretch our defense. They've got the ability to run the football. And South Carolina, you could argue that ODU is the more prepared team going into game 2 because they played an SEC opponent. And so they know what it's like to play a team that's strong up front, that's got offensive athletes all over the field. Defensively, they got guys fast, run all over the field, and they still were able to outgain them yards-wise, score right with them points-wise, and have a chance to win the game late in the fourth quarter. So they will be ready to play. They will be at home, which will be different for them as well this season. So, yeah, it's I won't say it's an uphill battle. I think both teams are probably pretty even going in, and the Pirates may even be a favorite. I haven't looked at the line, but it's going to be a tough ball game for the Pirates to go in and win at Norfolk State on their home field.
Kevin, Andre Powell is the new special teams coordinator at East Carolina. Coach Houston has had a relationship with him for a long time and certainly respected him and was very pleased to bring him aboard the Pirate ship. And I thought in terms of special teams, we saw some good things out of the return game against Norfolk State.
Yeah, I mean, Winston Wright Jr., we'd heard a ton about him. He's had that pass where he's played at some big-time schools, and we're happy to have him here in Greenville. And, I mean, yeah, right off the bat, he has a nice kickoff return to start the game and then another nice one later on where he got the ball out to midfield. And so he has a motor, and he can freaking fly. And so to get him in open space and Coach Powell to have that thing schemed up and blocked up where you can get him running in open space is going to be big for the Pirates in the future. The kicking game was solid. They punted well. They kicked extra points well. They didn't have to do a ton in the punting game. But yeah, what we saw on special teams, even in the coverage game, was solid. But yeah, having Winston Wright Jr. back there returning the football, and also Bond in the punt return game, I thought he did a good job. You know, he didn't have any big returns, but he was solid in terms of when to call fair catch, when not to. He looked comfortable back there catching the ball, and a couple times he had an opportunity to run it. You could see him making moves as he would as the running back and getting some yards. So so far so good for the special teams.
Coach Houston was asked about using Winston Wright Jr. and Javius Bond on the return teams, but he said you want to get the ball in those guys' hands as much as possible. So that worked out well this past Saturday night in Greenville. Not a big crowd, 36,000 for a season opener. It's not NC State, obviously, and that rivalry coming to Greenville like we saw a couple of years ago. But Jake Garcia made the statement in the post-game interview session with the media that East Carolina was going to have standing room only by the end of the season. So he's confident going forward.
You know, I was lucky enough to play in one of the largest crowds, in Daddy Ficklen Stadium, that 99 NC State game. We had over 50,000. And Pirate fans are passionate fans. They also love to see good teams come rolling into Greenville. And, maybe they're hesitant to come to a 6 p.m. game against an FCS opponent, which, I get that. But they also wanted to kind of see what this team was going to do. They were 2-10 last season. And so to come in and you'd be favored by 30 some odd points and end up winning, by even more than you were favored by, I think is a good first step. I think you go on the road and you beat ODU. I think it's a much different, atmosphere. And I say much different. I think it was still a great atmosphere. It was noisy in there. There were a lot of fans there. I think 36,000 would probably put you still at the top of the American Conference in terms of attendance. So there's nothing wrong with the crowd. But I think you get in the 40s as you start to win and as you start to impress people. And I hate that it's that way. I wish it was a sellout every week. But you go 2-10 and you get some disgruntled fans. So we'll get them back in there.
If the Pirates can get to 2-0 and they've got Appalachian coming to Greenville, that certainly would be an incentive, I think, for the fan base to turn out a little stronger maybe in week 3. But got to take care of business in Norfolk on Saturday night. And certainly the defense looks strong. I mean, there doesn't appear to be an area you can attack defensively for ECU.
Yeah, I like what I saw from the linebacking crew and Barker, and Craig, and Edwards, and the other ones that played. And the thing I like the most about it is the depth. The depth on the defensive line, the depth at linebacker, because they would just run guys on and off the field. And so that's what you got to be able to do, specifically when you're playing a team like an ODU that's going to stretch the field, that's going to make guys tired, it's going to have guys running sideline to sideline. You got to have depth. And when you do get the opportunity to substitute, you substitute, and there's no drop off when you substitute. So I was happy to see that we played a lot of guys in that game. The secondary, looked good. Somebody was beat on that interception return for Gibson. I'm told that maybe IBM was supposed to have deep coverage, and they ran a wheel route and got behind him. But Gibson, stepped up, saw there was a receiver running loose, ran him down, made a play on the football, and then had the wherewithal to get it upfield and go score with it. So guys are backing each other up. They're there for each other. Obviously we know what we're going to get from Savona. So, the secondary looks good. Linebacking looks great. And up front, we knew they were going to lead the defense coming into this season with 3 guys coming back. One of them, Stevens, having this being his 6th year. They just look strong. So defensively, I think they get a lot of pressure on ODU. I think pass rushing is still something that's unknown. I think we may have had 1 sack. At least we gave them credit for a sack on air. I don't know if they did on official stats, but last year was a season of very few sacks. And so they've got to do better about getting to the quarterback and getting him on the ground. Coach Harrell is good about dialing up different blitz calls. So I expect them to have opportunities to get this ODU quarterback on the ground. They have to be better than they were last year in these big-time games.
Kevin, let's talk about that Bonesville tradition, Kevin's keys to the game.
Yeah, I think we start with turnovers. I didn't think that, we'd have so many turnovers against an FCS opponent, Norfolk State. But I think Jake Garcia got to the point where he was trying to do a little bit too much, making some pre-snap decisions instead of seeing what the defense was doing after the snap, and also not using his check down. So I think Jake Garcia has to take care of the football. He's got to be smarter in those decisions to throw the ball, especially downfield. Take that check down to the tight end, take that check down to the wide receiver in the flats or the running back running the swing route, and don't do too much with the football. That's first and foremost. I think defensively, they've got to protect the big play. Old Dominion had 38 pass attempts and only 197 yards of passing because they take the short pass and they try to make their receivers make plays, a lot like what East Carolina does. But they do have the ability with Page and others to go deep. So you can't give it that big play. You got to be there deep in the back end, protecting each other and making plays. And then I just talked about it a minute ago. You got to get pressure on the quarterback. You've got to find a way to get to Wilson, get him on the ground. He had 11 rushing attempts. He runs the ball okay, but he was also sacked 5 times. And so getting to him will be big. It'll take the pressure off of the DBs and making plays up front. So, yeah, you got to find a way to get to the quarterback. So if you can take care of the football offensively, put pressure on the quarterback and play good in the back end, not give up any deep balls, I think you got a good chance to win this football game.
Sounds good, Kevin. East Carolina is still in the contention for the college football playoff, and we haven't been able to say that after week 1 for several years maybe, but that's the case going to Old Dominion Saturday night, and we'll look forward to seeing how that matchup plays out, and look forward as well to talking to you next week on the Bonesville Pregame Podcast.
Appreciate it, Al.